when you look at the whole genre of brutal death metal, to me, it was always, I just couldn't think of anything more brutal and from an inspiration standpoint than some of the stuff we're talking about.
Jamie, thank you so much for your time today. There's a lot to talk about, obviously, and you've had to talk a lot already. There's a lot of buzz around what's going on with BRODEQUIN, which is cool to see. So, first question, how are you doing right now?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your day to spend it with me. I appreciate it. And likewise, how are you doing?
I'm doing very good, to be honest. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So, I know that in other interviews, you've already talked a lot about the fact that, yes, most people that watch this interview probably know that it's been a while since your last full-length album. You guys had an EP not too long ago, but it's been 20 years since the last full-length. I'm not going to ask you about the why now and why so long, because you've had to answer that question many, many times. But releasing an album now after all that time, and I know you've had the EP, short EP. How are what you come across very calm? We're a few weeks away from this release. It can be scary as well for a band that's been away so long to now release something. Is there a level of, I'm not going to call it flat out fear, but is there that voice in your head as you were, working through this? Because, the EP came out when COVID was at its height. So it's an interesting time to have this comeback. You didn't get the full response that you would have had before. Was there a little voice in the back of your head that was like, will people still care?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There was. You're right. The EP kind of came out, when you had the COVID situation going on, which in some ways gave us a little bit of a pause, because we were kind of geared up to release it a little sooner after the EP. But then we thought, let's just hold back for a little bit here, because no one knew what was going on. You didn't know when you'd be able to go out and play to support. You had no idea, what the situation was going to be. So it gave us, in some ways, it was good. It was a double-edged sword. It was good because it gave you a little bit of breathing room, but at the same time, as you're talking about, it gave you more time to be apprehensive and to think, is this the way to go here? But no, I think when it was all said and done, sure, you have that moment where you're thinking, will anybody care? Will anyone be interested after all this time? And we've been super fortunate with the fan base and our friends that they have been extremely supportive, and the response has been, fantastic. And it's one of those things where, it's super special. Not many people get to do this type of thing to begin with, and even less get a kind of a second chance to do it again.
Right.
So being able to do that is really special, and we definitely don't take a single moment for granted.
Because everybody was kind of forced to be at home for longer times, and a lot of people were looking for new music and what have you, in a way also a little bit of a blessing in disguise that maybe more people actually noticed the EP and the comeback, if you will, versus if you would have released an EP and been on the road for a US tour and moved on from that.
That's very true. There were certainly huge parts of the population globally that during that time were kind of stuck to the screen, so to speak.
Yeah.
They were soaking up any bit of news they could, whether that's good or bad or healthy or not for us to do is, something we can definitely debate. But yeah, I think so. Maybe it did catch more eyes because more eyes were on the screen at that time. So again, yeah, it very well could have been a positive in that respect.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's go into, Harbinger of Woe, the new album that's coming out. So it is quite the thing. So when I listened to it for the first time from start to finish, at the end of it, I felt the need to smoke several cigarettes, and I don't even smoke. Like it's it's not for the soft of heart, if you will.
Right. Right.
It's compact, it's condensed. There's no time for a breather, if you will. Was that? I mean, you guys, obviously, people that know your older stuff know that you guys were not afraid to be fast, brutal, and heavy. But was that also like an intentional choice? Like, because we see so many bands right now spend, super long intros and building something bombastic and epic, and that can be great.
Yeah.
But was it for you guys like a conversation that's like, hey, we're not going to waste any time? It's like from the moment you press play, it has to grab you.
Yeah, that's something that I think we've done since the beginning. Every album, we've never had an intro. Again, there's plenty of bands that do great jobs with intros.
Of course, yeah.
It's just, it's just not something that we ever really thought about doing. We wanted to get kind of right into the business, right away as soon as possible, and save the samples for later on in the album or for outros or things like that, where we can kind of tastefully add them. But yeah, so we just wanted to keep that pattern going, and just as soon as you hit play, it's just on.
Yeah. Now, one thing as well, that in the production direction you went with this album, again, not necessarily something new for your sound, but for people that are new to the band, your vocals are in the mix a little bit more in the background, and to really make room for predominantly, it sounds to me at least, like rhythm and bass guitar have like really put in the spotlight, which in an interesting way makes the whole thing also maybe even more accessible than dare I say catchy at times.
Sure.
Which is not necessarily what you might expect when somebody's describing your music, but do you agree with that okay, it has to be brutal, it has to be heavy, but it also has to have that melody?
I think so. Yeah, I think you have to have some kind of a hook, right? There's some phenomenal musicians out there, and they don't really get kind of the credit they deserve, because when you listen to their songs, nothing ever repeats. There's nothing that ever you can hook into. They'll have fantastic riffs, and they'll play it one time, and it's really a shame. It kind of, I don't know, it's a real drag when you hear that, because it's such a great piece. You're hoping for it to come back. It can be such a hook. And so that's one of the things that, we've tried to do, is have something that, makes the songs stand out on their own. So when you're playing track 3, for example, on whatever album you want, oh yeah, that's track 3. What it is. Got its own unique identifiers,
We obviously see stories about medieval torture. No surprises there, but there's more to that, right? Basically, the art of war, or in this case, art of defense, maybe is also the way of putting it, with some of the songs, the nailment, in French, witch trials as well. Like it's the whole album is a bit of a buffet of the medieval times, if you will. Given that lyrics are so important to you, is it predominantly or even purely medieval or historical escapism, or should we, which you all love to do, start digging and finding different, more contemporary meanings and commentaries in these songs?
I think for me, I do try to kind of tell that story, as you mentioned, and I think it's evolved from the first couple albums. I may just describe lyrically what a piece of gear was, a piece of an instrument or an execution technique, and now I try to paint a bigger picture, to put you in that scene where maybe you're part of the crowd witnessing what's happening. And sure, I'll still go in and tell you what the instrument is or however they do it, but I try to paint a broader picture. And I think, to me, in the beginning and still now, when you look at the whole genre of brutal death metal, to me, it was always, I just couldn't think of anything more brutal and from an inspiration standpoint than some of the stuff we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Because it actually happened.
Because it actually happened. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's right. Instead of, where, and again, there's plenty of bands that I enjoy very much that delve more just into the fantasy side, if you will, of the brutal scenario.
Right.
And that's fine. It's just, to me, I just thought this was the ultimate.
When you hear a lot of people say like, oh, it's, the world is so horrible, it's so dangerous, and it's such a shit place to live in. It's like,
right,
if you were transported for 5 minutes back to medieval times, maybe you wouldn't have been so negative about today's world. Do you feel that as well? To some extent?
I do. I think, you can look through numerous historical texts, right, from all kinds of periods where people are saying that exact thing. This is a terrible time to be alive. The kids don't respect their parents, blah, blah, blah. And you hear this over and over
again. Young people don't want to work.
That's exactly right. So I think that's been going on forever. And there's a lot of things that we have that are amazing and we don't look at. I mean, you think of going back to the medieval times, for example, you could be out working and, injure yourself and you're just dead. You don't know it, but you are. Infection sets in and it's over. We take things like Neosporin and stuff like that for granted as an absolute joke, right? You could go buy it, do whatever, and you're fine. So, yeah, I think that's something that's going to carry on forever. Every generation is going to say the world is shit.
Exactly. Something that a little pet peeve of mine, if you will, is when people go like, oh yeah, like in the medieval times, people only lived until you were 35, then you were old. And it's like,
right.
Well, the average age may have been that, or average lifetime, but that's just because so many people died and very young. Like if you were healthy, you could grow old as well. It's just very unlikely.
You think about that. So it wasn't only just, an infection because you cut yourself, out working in the field, but people died from fever, man.
Right, exactly, yeah.
From fever, which is something now, you get a fever and you're like, oh man, I'll let it ride for a day and see if it can burn out, or I'll take something to take it back down. But no, that could have been fatal.
We're also like in the last 2-3 years, we're really in this golden age for old school death metal in different flavors. Like 5-6 years ago, it had to all be like genty, proggy tech death, but now it's this resurgence, if you will, of classic death metal. Do you guys see that as well? Like because of technology, you can now very easily see, oh well, I've got this many listeners in Singapore and this many people in South Africa, what have you. Do you see a broader response than 20 years ago?
For sure, and it goes into, as you'd mentioned, technology. Back then, yep, you still had things that people could catch on the music pretty quick, but nothing like now. Now, I mean, you put something online and it's global in minutes. It's just truly amazing. So we've definitely seen an expansion of the fan base due to things like you're mentioning, all the different streaming services. It's been pretty incredible, honestly. It's exciting, and you mentioned like a golden age, or almost like a renaissance, if you will, of the brutal death metal, and definitely have noticed that. I've seen several people talking about that, and it's pretty exciting, to see that happening again, because there for a while it was looking kind of grim. It wasn't a whole lot of growth, and now we're seeing an absolute explosion in the amount of bands that are out there.
No, for sure. Now, when it comes to the global appeal or reaction, you guys have also been embraced by some really, really cool European festivals as well. And I'm sure that as you were playing like Brutal Assault and Hellfest and what have you, those are festivals that that level of intensity or sometimes flat out organization doesn't really happen here in North America. That must also make you want to do more. So I'm going to use this as an extremely forced segue to the album's coming out, but for the remainder of the year, what can we keep our eyes open for when it comes to live shows?
Sure, I think you hit the nail on the head, so to speak. Festivals are kind of the way to go for us, especially with the way schedules are and things of that nature. And to be honest, the entire target audience is there. They're all converging on this location, and they're going to be there for days. And one of the things I've always enjoyed about fests is if you're on the road touring, you play a show, the show's over, you might have 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour to talk to people, and then you've got to go, because depending where you're playing, you might have to drive for 7 or 8 hours to get to the next show or more. But at the fests, you get to hang out for 2 or 3 days, and really kind of make a connection with people and other bands. And I think that's just the way to go.
Were there like surprising interactions that you had where you get feedback or stories from fans that you weren't necessarily expecting?
Yeah, I think it's been very surprising. There's been fans that have given me books at shows, books on torture from their native country, that are in their native language, and it's been fascinating that there's people that are interested in that. You know what I mean? And I've met people at shows that said, "Hey, I went to college and I majored in history because of your band," and that's insanely ridiculous to me. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. I never would have thought something like that would happen, or even the other bands that we look up to that know who we are. It's always shocking. Just never really saw that happen. We just thought it's going to be a few guys just writing songs and having fun, and if we can get some regional shows, that'll be great, and if some people enjoy it, that'll be great. And it completely blew up, way bigger than we ever envisioned.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned regional shows, and we're talking about the global, death metal wave, and you guys are from Knoxville, Tennessee. Yeah. When you think about Tennessee and music, you think about slightly different music than very brutal death metal, right?
That's very true.
You're thinking about Bristol scene, Memphis scene, and obviously Nashville.
Obviously,
I was recently in Nashville, and I didn't necessarily see a whole lot of death metal fans. What's the Knoxville scene like? Like what's going on in Tennessee?
So the Knoxville scene is, as far as local musicians go, is very, very small. As you would expect. Surprisingly, though, over the last few years, Knoxville's been getting a lot of shows. A lot of the tours have been coming through. The Cannibal Mayhem tour came through here, which was shocking to us. It's been weird, to see things like that come through. So we go to all of them because, even if you just saw Cannibal Corpse, 2 months ago, you're going to go to the show just because it's here. You're trying to support the promoters that are doing it, so they keep bringing them in. I guess, the other band that's known from Knoxville would be Whitechapel.
Okay, sure.
I've never, of course, right? I've never met any of the guys. I do appreciate their nod to the Jack the Ripper territory. I think that's pretty cool, from a historical, aspect, of course.
Yeah.
But I've never met them. I would obviously be pleased to meet them. They're local guys, but there's not a whole lot here. And Nashville, as you'd mentioned, is primarily country music, of course.
Right, exactly, and bachelorette parties.
Of course, the woo girls, yeah,
exactly. Hey, woo girls are welcome in death metal as well.
Right,
they might have to scream a little louder, but all
very
good,
true.
all good. Yep. Jamie, I'm super excited for you guys to release this album. Like I said in the beginning, it's short, to the point, and it'll take all the wind out of your sails in the best possible way. And it's not for the soft of heart and soft of mind, let's say. But I am looking forward to seeing festival announcements, and I hope that we get to see you both here in North America and on European stages, so that everybody can check you guys out. Really cool to have you guys back in full, glory.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And hopefully we will be able to bounce, not just the North American shows, but the European ones as well.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for your time, Jamie, and thanks for letting me kind of go all over the place here with some historical stuff as well.
Mine. Thank you very much. I always appreciate when people, spend time and take a moment to talk. I super appreciate it. Thank you very much.
There you go. Thank you. You're off the hook. I hope all of that was okay for you.
That was perfect, man. That was great conversation.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.